The time is just gone 8:39 a.m. as we continue with the broadcast this morning. Now we are now taking a look at the Agro Energy Fund that was announced by the Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, Thoko Didiza, and this comes against the problem we have experienced with load shedding, and South African farmers have been affected in more ways than one, and we are now talking about this 1.2 billion agro energy fund, which some say have thrown a lifeline against the impact of load shedding, and specifically aimed at helping the players out in the agricultural sector. We are now joined by Dr. Theo, Managing Director of the Southern African Agri Initiative, SAAI. Dr. Jager, good morning to you, sir, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, and what a privilege to share the platform with you.
Well, an absolute privilege to have you on with us as well, Doctor. And let's just talk about this lifeline that has been granted by the Minister of Agriculture, Thoko Didiza, and clear that farmers have suffered in more ways than one as a result of rotational load shedding.
There are three pillars for production. It is land, soil, and it is energy, and it's water. And it's a nexus between the three where production takes place. And unfortunately, because of the challenges, reliable energy on the farm with electricity, we have seen some of our anchor commodities really taking a knock. And it is mostly your small and medium-scale farmers, your family farmers, who struggle to survive. Actually, we have lost quite a number of them. It is those who need to maintain the cold chain, like table grapes. They are usually harvested in the early morning hours from 2 o'clock in the morning until the sun rises. And then they need to be cooled down to -1 and kept there until they are offloaded from a boat wherever it's being exported to. And you need a lot of electricity to maintain that cold chain, but also the hot chain. For example, in the chicken industry, where the chickens, when they hatch, they need to be kept at a certain temperature. And if it drops below that temperature, you will suffer losses, they will die. And then every irrigation farmer needs to pump water. So in agriculture, we are really big consumers of electricity. Hence, when load shedding stepped in, it had a devastating impact on farm level. And this initiative by the minister to launch a special facility where farmers can access financing to create alternatives for Eskom, just to breach those times of load shedding, but even to go beyond and maybe save ultimately on the budget for electricity is really welcomed. And it is welcomed more by your family farmers, the small and medium-scale farmers, than anyone else.
Yes, and also, Dr. Jager, looking at South Africa, and we know we've got a huge problem. We've got a massive problem that has been compounded by load shedding in terms of food production. And all these production interruptions that have been taking place have contributed to what is called as food insecurity, because at this point in time it's a huge problem. We know everybody's talking about the shortage of food, and the agricultural sector obviously critical, absolutely important, but all of this has not been helping the country in more ways than one. And the key issue here is how does one actually minimize or reduce the damage as a result of load shedding, and again contributing to this food crisis that we are seeing, that we haven't seen in this country before. When one looks at the level of poverty, the level of hunger that people going without food in this country, it's actually getting to very, very critical levels.
Yes, remember the the scarcer the commodity, the higher the prices will be. And the simplest way, but the most dangerous way to salvage the problem is simply to replace what we can no longer competitively produce in South Africa, to replace that with imports. Now, South Africa has forever been a net exporter of food. We didn't really have a national food security issue since the Second World War. This is not applicable to a household level. We do have serious problems with household food security, but there's enough food in the country to feed everybody. The challenge is whether it is affordable for everybody and within reach of them to buy it. Now, food security does no longer mean that any country produce everything it consumes. It means really that the country produce enough of that in which it has a competitive advantage, so that it can exchange from the food basket for that in which it does not have a competitive advantage. Hence, with this war in the Ukraine, or even during COVID, we have seen countries like Sri Lanka and India who closed their borders for exports. They said, let's first make sure we have enough for our own population to eat. While Japanese and Koreans, who always said, we don't need to exchange from the food basket. We exchange food for computers and smartphones and cars, that kind of stuff. They ran into problems. Because when things go wrong, when there's an unexpected war or a pandemic, and people are no longer interested in the cars or in the computers, they would rather eat. COVID did nothing else. It showed us, it taught us that we can live without most things we thought were important in our lives, but we cannot live without food. And this load shedding has really eroded our competitiveness. It is easier to import chicken from Brazil, where they have where they can produce it very cheap, because they are the world's biggest producers of soya, which is the main ingredient in chicken feed. But they do not have the challenges with electricity as we have it. So it's easier now to import the chicken from Brazil than to produce it ourselves, especially if you keep on losing money from chickens dying on the farm because it's too cold. And that's why this initiative to assist farmers on financing for alternative energy, solar panel systems and batteries and this kind of stuff is much more than just something to the convenience of the farmers. It is knocking at the very foundation of our food security.
Exactly. And also, I suppose, the infrastructure, the farming infrastructure that is impacted and affected as a result of load shedding. And as you correctly pointed out, that, this will go a long way in. Obviously maintaining that we have a sustainable food chain going as a result of less interruptions due to the load shedding crisis, but also looking at alternative energy sources. And I'm sure this is very welcome by the farmers, Dr. De Jager.
Yes, and not only by the farmers. Remember, if we can have a substantial number of farmers who no longer need to be on the grid all the time, there will be more energy available elsewhere in the economy. Hence, we are driving a big campaign with partners such as TAU, NIASA, the Agricultural Employers Organization, the Consumers Council. We call it SONESA, and it is about getting as many farmers as independent as possible from Eskom in the shortest possible time. And apart from going green, it would mean that there would be less demand on the grid from the rural areas.
Mm. And just looking at it from a food pricing perspective, because at this point in time, obviously we know a basket of food going to a supermarket and what people are actually paying, and these costs are astronomical. And just looking at how this may impact on the consumer, because looking at for instance, example, solar generated energy, for example, this has will definitely reduce the electricity bill of farms as well, and I'm sure that a lot of that can be actually passed on to consumers and also get us out of this high food inflation cycle that we become used to.
We sincerely hope so. But remember, this does not happen immediately. Usually, it takes about a year after disaster struck to feel it when you stand in front of the shops, in front of the shelves in shops. And similarly, if you recover, it takes more or less a year again before it trickles down to the consumer and you see the relief on that level. And so what we have seen now was simply the minister announcing this new mechanism, and we've heard about it from Land Bank already a month ago that this facility would be there. It is not a massive facility. It is 1.2 billion rand, which means it's not that many farmers which will benefit. But we hope that it will stimulate other banks and also financiers in the non-banking financial services domain to also step forward and assist with cheaper financing for alternative energy. Ultimately, if farmers thrive, then cities will also thrive. This is the reason why a country like Nigeria, for example, is in order to fight poverty in the cities. They give fertilizers to farmers. Fertilizers to farmers mean there's more production in the rural areas, more food coming to the cities, the prices drop, and city dwellers have a better expendable income. They pay less for their food. And we hope that this initiative can have a similar effect in South Africa.
Well, certainly, and obviously, Prof, or Doctor, just finally, obviously, this needs to be, there's got to be serious intent on the part of the government. And we know the Minister of Agriculture has actually made this announcement, but it is all about carrying it through, because the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And this country cannot afford an infrastructure, especially an agricultural infrastructure, in such tatters at this point in time. We've seen in the past, as you mentioned, we were an exporter. We were a net exporter of food. Now we're starting to import, and we've seen in the past, we've seen so much happening in the country in terms of the damage that has been done to the agricultural sector. And the one that comes to mind, and I always like talking about this, is Zabadila, for instance. I mean, this Zabadila was like a flagship agricultural project for this country. I mean, it was world renowned. When one just looks at the decay, and I'm sure that there are many, many other areas of the agricultural sector that have suffered similar consequences, Doctor.
Yes, yes. You see, it's one thing to have the initiative announced and to put it in place. As you say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and part of that that taste in the eating is, can we run this project corruption free? Can we make sure that we get the most efficient service for every rand and not see some of it being skimmed off, whether it is in initiatives where a few politicians take advantage of the business opportunities around it, and so. And then also, theft is a big theme on farms. And we already see that solar panels are being stolen at the same rate as copper cables on farms. There's a huge market driven by theft of solar panels. it is not good enough to put the panels on the roof and link it to a battery and a reticulation system. You must make sure that you can safeguard it against the criminals too. But then you mentioned now Gabriela, which is one of a few thousand farms where mere 10 years ago we still had the most competitive production. Gabriela was at its time the biggest citrus farm in the world. And the jobs it created really fed the whole district. And now it will cost more to get that farm productive again than what government had spent to buy it in the first place. There was no wise decision in the transfer process. There was no preparation of beneficiaries to make sure that they can maintain the farm, what to say to improve the farm. We really need to take a serious relook at the principles of rural development and land reform. And if I may be so blunt, if we cannot create a class of profitable beneficiaries, then we are wasting everybody's time and money, and we are gambling with food security. A farm which is not profitable is a welfare case, and we have created too many of those now.
Well, Dr. Jager, thank you very much for that. And I must say it's been an absolute pleasure having you with us and unpacking what you have with us this morning. We wish you all the best, sir. Please take care.
You are so welcome.
Dr. Theo Jager with us this morning against the announcement by the Minister of Agriculture regarding this vital funding, which is essential to help maintaining the financial viability of the agricultural sector. And also at the same time, we know that there are massive challenges, there are magnitudes of challenges facing South African farmers, to the extent that the energy crisis has just basically made the situation worse, compounded the problem. But the key issue here, and the Agri SA Executive Director, Christopher van der Rede, said the fund would provide vital support for the farmers who safeguard South Africa's food security, given the cost pressures facing farmers, notably as a result of load shedding. The time is just headed for 8:57. We're going to go for a break, and we'll come back in time for the news.